God takes you through experiences because he knows how he's going to use you down the road.
Huge.
So make sure that's why it's so important to always build the discipline of reflection into your life, because everything you go through, reflect on it, because you never know 10 years down the road, 20 years, God may use you based on that experience.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Framework Leadership, a podcast about principles and ideas you can use today to take your leadership to the next level. We are now exclusively a part of the SU Podcast Network. I'm Ken Engel, your host, president of Southeastern University.
And I'm your co-host, Michael Steiner, Senior Vice President for Advancement and Innovation. And today, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Got an amazing guest, don't you?
No, I have a great guest, not just a great guest, but a great topic for everybody that cares about really the future of this country and the future of where we're going together and how we've been on the forefront. We're talking about the future of higher education with the man who is on the bleeding edge of this and has been on the bleeding edge of it for a long time. So this is great. This wraps up kind of the beginning, our intro of season 7. And we've been touching on this for a little bit, but I want to go back. We talked about a couple episodes when you first came to Southeastern. You said that there were a couple things that you felt like God said, if you ever became president, this is what you'd want to do. Can you talk about what those things were?
Yeah. Well, 3 things, actually, that I feel like are important in higher education today, and actually are the most important issues in higher education today. But creating accessibility, again, having access to different levels of education, because education is what helps people to bring their best self to their context. Yeah. I don't think you can grow to new levels unless you incorporate education into your life.
Yep.
It really is a discipline. In fact, education is discipline in many ways. So I think that's important. I think the second piece is, again, experiential, because what I observed a lot of times, you get great classroom knowledge and education, but you never get, a lot of times you couldn't experience it until you earned the degree.
Yep.
Then you step out. It was like, you have to do this first. You have to do. I felt like, why don't you do it together?
Right.
Why don't you create ways where you can actually, what you talked about today, you can actually experience it in a real life setting. And I've always felt that's important. And then the other thing is, cost of education. It's significantly growing and growing and growing, and we have to have ways that we can really change that.
Yep.
And so, you've got to, in leadership at a university, those are the kinds of things you have to think about. How do we create more programs that will allow people access?
Yep.
How do you get that education to people in a way that allows them to experience it in vocational life, even while they're learning? And then ways to hopefully help with the cost.
Love it. And honestly, those 3 things, the expanding the number of access, the getting it to them, and then lowering the cost, that's literally been your journey as a president so far. Take us back to those beginning first years. You launched some pretty innovative stuff with Southeastern coming out of that listening exercise. Walk us through what happened at the beginning.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, what you're discovering when you start to listen is the unique creative design of the people that are there, and what would be important and valuable to say, this is what will set us apart as a university. This is what will differentiate us. Because there's all kinds of faith-based universities, but each one is unique based on why? Because of the people that are there. So we just started discovering early on some of those need-oriented opportunities that would create access. So one of those would be healthcare and nursing.
Yep.
And each constituent, we had, I don't know how many constituency groups, and they all met separately. But what was unique, and this is the thing you'll discover in listening, is there will be a common thread. Yeah. And this group didn't know this group said the same thing they said, but you discover those things. And when you start seeing a pattern, it helps you to recognize, this is something we would be good at. Yep. Or you discover need-oriented issues. What's important? What are people calling for? What's the workforce calling for? We learned early on nursing. there's a nursing shortage
Right.
in America today, and especially in the state of Florida. We didn't have a nursing program. So it would be wonderful to begin to develop that. We didn't have a lot of graduate education to help
Right.
students get to a new level of learning and application to their life. And it's really, a lot of times in graduate education, you do get to have that experiential piece
Yep.
added. We discovered that. We discovered three things that we really wanted to focus on. We wanted to focus on curricular development
Yep.
through that. So new programs, access programs. We wanted to co-curricular experiences, and co-curricular includes things like, chapel experiences, how you're growing your faith. It includes sports
Yep.
influences, I mean, those kinds of things set culture.
Yep.
And one of the things that we discovered early on too was football. Everybody wanted football, and I'm thinking that's a pretty big undertaking to start an entire collegiate football program.
Yep.
We don't even have a stadium.
Yep.
But what we discovered was that was a unique cultural piece to grow community, and so we started launching out on that. A third component we discovered is, again, how do we network
Yeah.
in creating accessibility?
Yeah.
So creating campuses outside
Yep.
of this campus, and that's where we began to coin the phrase "taking scholarship to the streets."
Yeah, and I want to sound off on this because at the beginning it was this expansive growth of the traditional campus, and it was amazing, adding all these programs and co-curricular. But then stepping into the church, and that vision actually didn't come from just when you started as president. It goes all the way back to where you were a pastor. Tell us how you arrived at this idea to bring scholarship to the streets.
Yeah, and I want to make this point important because God takes you through experiences because he knows how he's going to use you down the road.
Huge.
So make sure that's why it's so important to always build the discipline of reflection into your life, because everything you go through, reflect on it, because you never know 10 years down the road, 20 years, God may use you based on that experience.
Yep.
And that's what I discovered. In that listening, we discovered this ability about going out and taking scholarship, but that actually started when I first went into pastoring 13 years ago. And out of that, again, I was a believer in educational stewardship. I did that with my own life. I had a broadcast journalism degree. Why? Because I went into broadcasting.
Yep.
So I needed, if I'm going to be the best, I need that kind of education. Well, I went then next to ministry leadership. I needed that education. So I went back and got the master's in theological studies. If I wanted to continue to grow and be the best ministry leader, I needed more education. So I kept following that to be a good steward of my life. So I thought when we put together this new work in Northwest Los Angeles, we need to create an educational stewardship for two reasons. Number one, isn't that how you begin to discover your design, which is the responsibility of the church?
Yeah.
Really starting at cradle
Yep.
to help students, help parishioners discover who God made them to be, and discipling their lives. So that's one reason why it's part of discipleship. Another reason why is because we did a values audit in our community when we started. Values are discovering what that community believes is important for them to thrive. And we discovered education was like at the top. They want to learn more. They want more access. So I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great? And then a third component was develop leaders in the church. And we had brought a lot of new leaders in that had come from the fields of business and things like that. And I thought, let's build an educational component in the local church. And so I thought, well, the best place to do is go to the colleges, especially the faith-based colleges around. So I did. I went to Azusa. I went to Cal Lutheran, Cal Baptist. I went to, at that time, it was Southern California College. All of these different universities in the LA area and said, here's what I'm thinking. Could you help us build an educational program in our local church? And again, this is in the early 90s, and they just looked at me like I was strange, an alien.
Right.
What do you can't think of education that way. You've got to come to us.
Wow.
You have to come to the traditional end. It's all residential. You have to live here on campus, all of that. And they had no clue. And I thought even then, man, if there was a way to shape that somehow, some way, I didn't know what God would do in my life. I didn't know I'd be in education. So fast forward to Southeastern, even did some of this at Northwest, but how do we take that scholarship to where people are instead of expecting them to come to us?
Right.
Out of that, we birthed the SCU Ministry Network.
Yep.
Started in 2014 with just one campus, and now we've exploded to over 240 campuses. I think we're starting another 30 this fall.
Yep.
We're not only all around the nation, but we're now overseas in Brazil and Moldova and Argentina. And, so it's just exciting to see because, again, it's meeting the need.
Yep.
And what's out there. And then also this is the way we can drive down the cost because we don't have the overhead like you would have on a traditional campus.
Right.
Everybody has this beautiful traditional campus, and we have one of the most gorgeous campuses around. But there's costs with that. I mean, you have food service, you have housing, you know, all the insurance issues, all those things that create cost. But yet if you can somehow reduce that. So when we partner with churches, they have the facilities there, so we're able to cut the cost by basically 2/3.
Yes.
And many of those students are eligible for Pell Grants, which are grants that you don't have to pay back, which is great. And it's always based on need and merit in those senses. But many students, we've had a lot of first-generation students now being able to go to college because of this kind of access and affordability. And many of them are graduating on their way to being debt-free. So I think all of that helped us to develop that in a way that hit those three issues.
Well, and what's incredible is you didn't start off to make a degree that was 2/3, right? You started off to serve the church,
right?
To actually serve students, to actually meet them where they're at. And what's incredible is that when you actually take that posture and say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to serve them the best I can, that's when all these innovations come from. And so, when you started the network, college was still very much traditional 4-year. That's the way it is, all that kind of stuff. Fast forward now 14 years later, we're having a different conversation about college nationwide. I mean, parents and students are really going in. Is it worth it? Should I do this? All this crazy things. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing, this trends, and how universities need to be stepping into this space like you have.
Yeah, well, again, I think there's a lot of issues driving that. I think the economy is driving that. And when you have seen over the last decade the cost of higher education grow exponential. I mean, it's just been crazy how much. And again, some of that's tied to inflation and those kinds of things. But some universities take advantage of that and drive the costs way up. So families can't afford it anymore. So that's one issue as to why they're looking at the ROI of that. The other thing is, with the advancement of technology and all of that, some people, do we really need a formal education? And I would say maybe not.
Right.
That's why educational institutions need to look at different aspects of accessibility, different programming that maybe somebody wants to get into the workforce right away. So, for example, trades. We're about to launch we are launching a massive trades program, HVAC,
plumbing,
electrical, all of those kinds of things, because first of all, the workforce is calling for that, and we're able to provide certification. Maybe someone doesn't need a full degree, but they need certification. Why can't we step into that arena and provide that education, and especially be able to provide it with a faith-based integration of faith with their learning and then their life application. So I think things like that are important, and that's what parents are looking for.
Yeah.
And again, the other thing is the freedom to choose
You're right.
what kind of education they want,
Right.
and based on their values and how they want to live their life. And everybody has that choice in this nation, and that's what's so wonderful. So, we want to be able to do everything we can to meet people where they are and where they need to go to be the best they can be in service to their communities.
Right. And so as we wrap up this episode and kind of this time, you've got donors, you've got parents, you've got legislatures and regulators, and they're all looking at this question of what does education look like in the future? In your opinion, being on the forefront of high innovation, but then also seeing it in other universities, what are the hallmarks? What are the things that people should be looking at, people should be asking from their colleges in order to know, hey, this is a place where I'm going to have a good investment?
Well, again, I think first and foremost, is it a community that's really going to help you discover who you are?
Yeah.
And do they have the right kind of education tools? Do they have the right kind of programs that will help them in that process? I think the other thing that's so important is who you get to study with, especially the professors, the people that are going to be influential in your life, because I think we can all look back at professors that had profound influence on us and became mentors in our lives. When you're on a personal journey of discovery, people who are around you have a great deal of influence in the way you're being shaped. So those things are important, that who you get to study with, you want to make sure you're looking at that. And then you do want to look at, are you truly investing in who you are, or are you just going to get a degree?
Right.
You want something that will be valuable to set you on the right course. And of course, you want that to be affordable. So those are the things that you have to look at when you're approaching education in your life. But you cannot lose the guiding principle that it's all about life stewardship. You want to be the best that you can be. And the only way you can do that is to get education in your life.
Yep. And I think you can summarize all that up with being an institution that is student focused. And here's what's crazy is I think most colleges would say they're student focused. They would try it. But how many of them actually align their programming? How many of them actually align their operations the way they think
students.
To actually serve students?
Right.
And we get it. I mean, we're in higher education. It's hard. It's tough. But there's so many people that don't go the extra mile, don't go the way of the innovation because they say, oh, I can't. I would love to do that for students. I think that's the best thing, but I can't because of X, Y, Z. And what we found is that, no, if you really believe it and you do whatever it takes to serve that student and their family, the innovation comes.
Right.
It powers through and kind of moves on from there.
And by the way, we learn as much from them as they learn from us. And when we have those interactions, it helps us to be better able to serve them. So developing things, being innovative, doing things that nobody would think about. And that's what we relish here at SEU. We want to be on the forefront of being innovative, driving a new curve of where education's going, and again, being able to ultimately provide first and foremost as a faith-based university, a Christ-centered culture, environment, and then of course being student-focused where we truly take time to come alongside them every way that we can.
I love it. Love it. Well, thanks so much for your time. And thanks you so much for listening to Framework Leadership. Welcome to season 7, folks. We're excited for the conversations we're going to have on Framework Leadership this season. And so if you want to stay up to date with Dr. Engel, you can follow him on his website, kentengel.com. There's a great email list where we have a lot of incredible resources to help you grow as a leader. You can also follow him on X at Kent Engel or on Instagram at Kent_Engel. And we'd love to be a part of your leadership journey. Thank you so much for listening to Framework Leadership.